Hello, welcome back to my tea house. For today's cup of tea, we'll be doing a deck profile on the new Blue JJK Sukuna deck. Now, first and foremost, for everyone that is running amok, spreading misinformation, claiming that this deck is no longer viable, that this deck isn't top 3, that it barely reaches top 10, for everyone that says Karapika is still king, I need you guys to take a step back, reevaluate yourself, and ask yourself, why did Sukuna still win the first world championship tournament ever for Union Arena, even with the current restrictions that we had? And I'm pretty sure they had an additional restriction as well. It's either it was an additional or they ended up changing it to the 2 Sukuna and like a couple UGs. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure they ended up restricting the Fingies, not Yuji. I'm pretty sure they added that you can only have 2 Sukunas and 3 Fingies. Like they had an additional ban and it still won the first ever world championship for Union Arena. So when you hear that, I want you to think to yourself, okay, just because Purple Rush is doing what it's doing, just because we have the 2-1 Karapika that allows more impact, I love Karapika. It was great. I'm super happy to finally have another IP in the mix, to finally have Yellow Lullaby Nobara. But I need you guys to realize that Sukuna is a completely different beast. It's a completely different animal. If you want snipe like Karapika, you got that. If you want bounce like Blue Hunter Hunter, you got that. If you want rest like Lullaby Nobara or Yellow Bleach, you got that. If you want the double damage, you have that too. You also have the search and cycle power without the 2-1 Yuji in this deck. This deck has everything. It is well balanced, and there is a reason why we had the 2-1 pair ban with the 2-1 Yuji and the 4-1 Sukuna. It's just too consistent. 2-1 letting you look at the top 5 and grab a Fingy to hand, and then the Sukuna allowing you to look at the draw 2 and then discard. It's way too consistent, and it had to be nerfed. That way it could level out the playing field. The deck is very, very, very much still strong, and something that we are going to have to deal with in the meta for a very, very, very long time. You know, shout out to John. He's been helping me, coaching me here and there. He's been testing with some Japanese players, or no, not Japanese. I think Singapore. One of the pro players over there that's won a big tournament. That's my boy. Even he has stated that Renji Rush is still very much strong. But when you go into the Sukuna matchup, when you go into the purple code Gias, green Lancelot, and red code Gias matchup, it's a 50-50. It becomes a pilot dependent battle. It becomes a skill matchup and a little bit of RNG. Little bit of RNG, you know, hitting a double special off of life. We've all been there. This deck is going to be a problem, and I'm super excited to both play against it, test my skills, and to see the competitive scene over here continue to grow and prosper. Now, for those that haven't heard about the news or understand what it is that I'm ranting about or complaining about, the other day Bandai has announced that there is a pair ban, the first public restrictions that we have received in NA. The Rukia and Orihime were like quiet bans that a lot of people didn't realize. If you knew, you knew. But this ban is public. You can no longer play the 2-1 Yuji and the 4-1 Sukuna out the gate in your decks because, again, it's too consistent. I know a lot of people didn't even know the 4-1 Sukuna existed. You get it in the starter deck, and for people saying that it's not even worth buying the starter decks anymore, you still need to run the 4-1 Sukunas. Just cop the deck, bro. And you want that alt art. Come on, that alt art, it looks beautiful. Now, that being said, taking a look at some of the Japanese decks, some of the Singapore, Thailand, all of that, and looking at the things that was played during this restriction era, I saw a lot of Nanami being added into the package, just allowing you to have a strong defense, and then while resting your opponent's card, mill the top 2 off your deck. even with the 3-1 attacking. So for what we're going to be doing in my deck list, we are going to be adding the Nanami package to the Sukuna. Just because we don't have the 2-1 Yuji, the Maki is a great placement for it. There's still a lot of cards in the deck that allows you to scry the top of your deck. And like when I say this is just a tickle to what the deck can do, you guys just hear it for yourself. Enough of the ranting, enough of the complaining. Let's get right into the mix. Now, getting into it, some of you may already know how I like to build my decks. For those that don't know, I always like to start off with the win conditions, which happen to be the raid cards, or sometimes the 2 action point big drops that we will see in future decks, or the yellow gojo that some see in this set. So starting off with it, we have the 4-1 Sukuna, the topic of conversation, the big bad boy. A lot of people, for some reason, aren't aware of this card. It's interesting, and they don't see it. I don't know what it is, but for those that are interested, you get this card in the starter deck. This is the starter deck Sukuna that you get, and I see some people not even including it now because of the restrictions, and it's baffling, quite honestly. But what makes this card so busted is that when you have a finger in your deck, the fingies, it gains 1000 BP, so then it becomes 5k, right, until the end of the turn. And then if there are 2 or more, the card gains impact. For some, they're like, that's not that scary, but when you pair it with the Malevolent Shrine and you have 4 fingers in your graveyard, this card now gets Snipe. And on top of that, you can also give that same Sukuna impact +1, meaning you can swing, remove a card off your opponent's board, and deal 2 damage with 1 swing, and it makes this card extremely nasty. And on top of that, if they don't block, you're still dealing damage too. So it's just nasty, it's nutty. There's a reason why that they had to take out the 2-1 Yuji, because the other effect that this Sukuna has is the draw 2 cards and place 1 card from your hand to the sideline. So if you happen to filter through, you draw 2, you get a thingy, you can just toss it right off the bat, or if you want to keep it just for an extra draw extender, you can do that as well. But this is the bread and butter of the deck, the main win condition. The second win condition, in my opinion, would be the 5-1 Sukuna. And now that the 2-1 Yuji ban has been has been implemented, I've gone ahead and upped this from just 2 copies to 3, because the 5-1, when you raid it in, it stuns one of your opponent's characters on the other side of the field, and it also allows you to search your top 5 cards for either a Sukuna finger or a Malevolent Shrine. So if you already have the shrine in hand and you just need 1 or 2 more fingies to get really, really active and really going, you can raid this in, get a stun so you don't have to worry too much, and hopefully they don't draw into an active trigger, and hopefully you draw into that last fingy or Malevolent Shrine to really, really get active. It is a really good card, really strong card. If the ban wasn't in effect, I would run it at a 2 of. I think people bounce between the 2 of or the 3 of. Really strong card, and again, it works in tandem with the Malevolent Shrine. You can give it Snipe, and you can give it Impact, and also damage too. The only difference, right, being this Sukuna will only have 1 impact damage, whereas this one, since it has impact, will gain 2. The Malevolent Shrines do stack, from what I'm told and from what I remember. If you have 2 of these on field and you target both the 4-1 Sukunas with it, I'm pretty sure it deals damage 3. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So if you have 2 on field, you can just target the Sukuna twice and still give it the impact 2. But damage 2 does not stack, okay? In order for damage to stack, it has to be damage +1, okay? If it's damage 2 and you target it twice, there's no damage 4 going on. None of that funny business. Now, the third and last win condition, in my opinion, will be the Yuji Itadori, the 4-1. In all honesty, I know people are really complaining about the 2-1 Yuji, but if I'm being honest here, this Yuji is a problem. This is a problem, bro. Like, the amount of removal with the snipe, the bouncing in this deck is obscene, and it adds to why this deck is so scary and so consistent, even with the restrictions that they put on there. I mean, the deck won in Japan, even with all the restrictions that they had, right? You can choose one character with 4,000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand. This helps for tempo changing, it helps for clearing the board and really getting that damage too from the Sukuna out, or getting the clear with the snipe and further putting your opponent behind in tempo. A really important card. A lot of people are sleeping on the 4-1 Yuji. I've seen a couple decks where they don't even put it in there. I think you guys might be off that good, truthfully speaking, but you know, to each their own, I'm still new, so I don't truthfully know what I'm talking about either. I just go based off of what I've seen and what I've learned work in Japan, in Thailand, in Singapore. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know what I'm saying? And that's it, right? I do have one more raid option, but I don't consider this a win condition. It's more of a tech to help get us some cards filter and also be defensive. So we'll get into that in a second. So moving forward, let's get into it, right? After we talk about our raid characters or our boss mons, right? We need to talk about the fodder, what helps the deck really run. And luckily for us, our 3 win conditions all utilize the same Yuji Itadori as its raid fodder, so this will be quick. We are running 4 of the 0-1 Yuji, self-explanatory. The more and more I've played, the more and more I feel like triggers are king, and I'm more biased to cards that have triggers, trying to keep trigger costs to like 8 and lower, if possible. 9 is okay. And then normally if you're building a green deck, you're probably going to hit around the 10 to 11 ratio. But I'm seeing a lot of these decks that do top in the other regions can easily rebuild their board, have a lot of good triggers out of life and stuff like that. So I'm keeping that in mind when building these decks. So we have the 0-1 Itadori at 4. Moving on, we're just going to go right into the actual deck. We're going to be running 4 of the 0-1 Nobaras. Okay, this card is important because it helps cycle through your deck, it helps you draw, and then it also allows you to instantly discard a fingy if you have it in your hand. Yes, I said fingy. It's not a mistake. I've been saying fingies this whole entire time. Shout out T-Mac. This allows you to help cycle and filter through your deck, which is very important. And on top of that, it also has a draw card trigger. So if you get hit out of life with it, it will allow you to continue filtering through your deck, which is very important and very valuable, especially now with the 2-1 being gone. Moving forward, we have the Kento Nanami. Some people would run the other 0-1, which has a draw trigger as well. It's the Beanie Dude, and it's a 2K. It's a 0 cost 2K, which is pretty strong starting off, and it has a trigger. But I'm running the Kento Nanami just because I like the raid option for him. This is something that was ran in Japan, and was a part of the winning deck list when they had these restrictions for them. The 4-1 Nanami allows you to rest your opponent's card if this card is sidelined, and then and then you may also place 2 cards from the top of your deck into your sideline, again, which helps you get stuff from your deck to the sideline, hoping that you accidentally hit a thingy and you don't even have to worry about getting. So again, it helps you cycle through your deck, and also it allows you to rest another card that could potentially deal damage that turn. Very good for a defensive card, and then also it's a 4K body, so it allows us to put pressure on the opponent and swing that same turn if we happen to raid it in. Moving forward with the deck list, we have the Maki. Maki was already an amazing card in this deck. If you want to run this at a 4 of, now that the 2/1 Yuji is banned, I don't mind. I don't blame you. I'm running it at a 3 of, again, just because I want to tech in the Nanami package. But the Maki, no trigger, and again, the card has to really add to the deck for me in order to include it if it has no triggers moving forward with my career as a UA player. Maki allows you to draw the look at the top 2 cards of your deck, and then you get to add one to your hand and place the remaining in your sideline. So again, helping you filter through your deck, helping you search for those win conditions, whether it is the Shrine, the Sukuna, or the Thingies, and getting it in the trash and getting it into your hand. Another cool thing about the Maki, it's pretty weak for a 2/1, right? It's 1500, but if you have 4 or more event cards, which you will if you're using the Thingies or the Divergent Fist or the Bankais, etc., you get an additional 1500 BP and the card becomes 3k. Not that crazy, but it's not hard to hit that requirement as well. Moving on, we have the 3/2. Okay, just making sure. We have the 3/2 UG. Y'all already know I have a thing about 2 action cost cards. I like running 4 at most. 3 is like the bread and butter for me. But I never really want to go above that. This UG will be your color trigger. The blue doesn't really have the best color trigger, but hey, being able to bounce a card that's 3500 or less on your opponent's front line is still pretty strong. The when played ability allows you to bounce a 3500 or less BP character on your opponent's front line. If you have 1 or 2 Sukuna fingers in your sideline, you get to return it to their hand. But if you have 3 or more, you get to sideline that character. It's just another good way of removing filth on your opponent's board and really opening up the doorways to deal direct damage. And then on top of that, a nice combo, if you can do it, is you drop this UG, you pop something on their board, then you raid in the other UG, and then you pop another card on their board, right, that same turn. Maybe you Bankai before you do that, and you're able to set up the Sukuna or set up another option, and you're able to snipe something, bounce something, and KO something all in one turn, right, and deal basically 3 to 4 damage depending what's on your front line. Very good card. It also gives you the double energy, which we need in this deck. Not a lot because we're not trying to hit 6. We kind of peak at 5 with the 5/1 Sukuna, but even then we really only need 4 to operate this deck. Moving forward, we have the 3/1 Nanami. I can't remember if I saw anyone in the other regions running this or not, but what drew me to this is just the ability when attacking to place 1 card from the top of your deck into the sideline, again helping you filter. But also when you do that, you get to choose a character on your opponent's front line and minus it by 1000 BP. So when you pair that with the 4/1 UG, right, and you swing, you can minus a 5k, whether that is the yellow Gojo. I hate having to build decks against some of my favorite decks, whether it's the yellow Gojo 5k body or the Karapika, right? You get it down 1000 BP, and then on top of that you raid in, or well, not raid in, I guess that doesn't work, but because it's when attacking, but even then you can still minus the 5k body by 1000. That way when you do swing with the 4k and they choose to block, right, the card dies in battles. But even then, I think this card is still good for filtering and again just helping you shrink some of the cards on your opponent's line. In the original deck list that I was building before the restrictions, and the reason why I waited to make this video, I was running the Toto, and I thought that it would be a cool combo for like the Kento to swing minus something, and then the Toto swings and then swaps the Kento to the back and then swaps something up, right, and then so on and so forth. Now, and on top of that, right, we like the draw trigger as well. Moving forward from that, we have the 3-1 UG, which you get in your starter deck. We're running this at a 4 of. The Nanami, I don't think I said, but we're running this at a 3 of. We're running the UG at a 4 of. We love the active trigger, giving one of our cards plus 3000 BP and the ability to possibly survive a little bit longer. These are probably my favorite triggers in the whole entire game. The active triggers might be the strongest. It might be my favorite. Next to the special, it depends. The active trigger allows me to potentially keep another body on board, but then the special removes. So that's a debate that we could talk about. Maybe I'll make a reel about it. But this UG, double energy, and it's a 3k body. But if it is in your front line and you have a thingies in the trash, it becomes a 4k body and just helps as a blocker if you want it in the front. Majority of the time though, you're probably going to keep it in the back. That way you can use the thingies to tap it, to activate your AP, get the draw off, and then you still have the 2 energy producing in the back. Moving forward, we are running the 4-1 UG. We've already talked about this at a 4 of. Then the Kento Nanami, I brushed over it a bit, but again, we are running this at a 2 of. I've been debating whether I wanted to reduce the Maki back down to run this at a 3 of, but the Maki I feel like is just a little bit stronger in helping us cycle through the deck. But again, I do like this being a 4k body and being able to rest one of your opponent's cards when it gets sidelined. It's just a nice defensive card in my opinion. We talked about the Sukunas, right? Now the thingies, the things that make the deck really operate, helps it really run. The thingies are a 1 of 1. The card cannot be used unless you take one of your life and put it in the trash, or you rest one of the UGs that you have on your field. Obviously, you don't want to self-harm and remove your life, so you want to put in as much UGs as possible, especially since they're raid fodder. Tap them, and it just helps you cycle through your deck. Once again, it gives you draw, and it's basically free except for tapping your UG, but then you can raid into it. And on top of it, it has a draw trigger as well, so it helps sustain and helps filter if you hit out of life. Moving forward, we have the domain expansion. We are running a 4 of. More and more, I teeter with running 3 or 4 depending on the deck and what it calls for. The domain expansion in this deck, you really want to extend your turns. Sometimes you want to hold on to maybe 2 domain expansions if you hit them until you can pull off that big turn and really cycle through your deck, get everything placed, and then raid everything in and just make a huge comeback. That's one thing that I see very common when played at the high level, and something that I've been trying to properly learn and master, when to hold on to the turn extenders and how to properly use them the right way. Obviously, we know what the final trigger does, so we're going to move on to the Divergent Fist, which is our special trigger for the deck. You get to choose one character with 5,000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand. If UG is on the field, you sideline it instead. It's basically a get to go. This card is going to be really annoying because just like Bleach, you're most likely going to have a UG on the field at all times, and because of that, it's going to hurt, it's going to smack. Just the removal in this deck, pairing it with the snipe, the special, and then the bounce that we have is ridiculous, bro. It's so stupid, bro. It's so stupid. You're gonna run this at a 4 of. I don't really need to explain why. And then last but not least, the Malevolent Shrine. I see some people run this at a 1 of. I see some people run this at a 3 of. I think running it at 3 or 1 is crazy. I honestly think 2 is the sweet spot. If you hit it out of life, you get to add it to your hand. You can search with it with the 5-1 Sukuna, and then with filtering, you're most likely going to hit this card. And this card is the third, second, one of those 2 most important cards in the deck. Like I had said earlier on in this video, it allows you to give your Sukunas snipe, damage 2, and impact. Amazing card. It comes in active, I think. Yeah, it comes in active. So the turn you play it, you can really get your ish off and do some crazy damage to your opponent. But that's it. That's the deck breakdown. Let's swap back over to share my final remarks and thoughts. So there you have it. There's the deck profile. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts, what you would run differently. I've seen some interesting builds. I've seen some people running the 2/6 Sukuna in there. I could understand it as a one of, but honestly, what this deck excels at is being able to build back up your board very fast. Running off of 4 energy is the sweet spot. You don't have to worry about it. It's just as fast in tempo as the Purple Rush deck. And then if you need to, you could easily add the additional card in the back to go up to 5 to rate in the 5/1 Sukuna. The 2/6, it's cool for what it can do, but spending 2 action points and then having to ramp up to 6 just so you could wipe the board, I think is a lot to ask for. And honestly, I think it, for how fast our region plays, it's just too slow in my opinion. I'm curious to see how people play. I don't mind a one of it, I guess, but again, I just think that it is doing too much. Another thing before we close out is I've been seeing some people say that the 4/1 Yuji is not worth it. I see people not wanting to run the 4/1 Yuji at all in their deck list, and why? A card that freely bounces a 4k BP back to your hand, and then you can attack that same turn. Why not run that? It works in the defensive raid. It comes in clutch if you get in the defensive raid. It comes in clutch if you want to swing the tides back into your favors. I don't know. I'm curious, guys. Like, you're losing me. Some of y'all are really losing me. Other than that, me personally, I love Kurapika. I do think that Kurapika is still going to be a big player in our region. I don't think that it is the tier 0 that everyone is claiming it to be. I think it's just popular. It's obviously, in my opinion, the best deck right now. I think Purple Rush, if you have the right pilot, bests it out, and then the Toshio does a little thing. But when it comes to Orlando, I think Code Geass and Sukuna and Kurapika will all be king. I'm looking forward to test driving the purple Code Geass. I just printed out my proxies, so you could probably expect a deck profile. I might keep that, hush hush, just because that will be what I take to Orlando. We'll see. I might gatekeep it. I really want the Lullaby Nobara to work, but just looking at how some of the other decks operate, I don't know. There's a couple cards that we get in set 2 that I think that are important that we just don't have yet. But I'm gonna be there to push. Like, that's my baby. That's the first deck I ever made in this. That's the first deck that a lot of you have found me for and showed love. So I very much appreciate that. But all that to say, it's looking to be amazing. Union Arena is looking to be amazing. It's looking to be competitive, and I'm super excited to see what more we get. So until then, I'm glad you guys stopped by the TLs. I hope you enjoyed your tea break, and I'll catch you on the next one.